His mother threw a blank check at my feet and said, "Write any number you want, then take that baby and disappear." The check landed face up on my porch boards, right between two nail heads I'd been meaning to hammer down for a year. Signed, dated. The amount line empty, like a dare. A blank check is a strange thing to look at when you have $1,914 in your checking account and a baby monitor crackling in your back pocket. It doesn't look like money. It looks like a verdict. Like somebody has already decided what you are and now they're just waiting for you to agree on the price. She stood on my bottom step in a cream suit that cost more than my truck and pearls that cost more than my house, and she looked at my porch the way you look at something stuck to the bottom of your shoe. "Pick it up," she said. I didn't. And to understand why my hands were shaking but my feet weren't moving, why I stood on that rotting porch like it was the last dry ground on earth, you have to understand the 15 months that came before it. 15 months. That's how long I'd been alone. 15 months since I wrote her son a letter telling him I was pregnant. He never answered. He's a billionaire. I'm a waitress. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I just had 15 months of an entire town telling me exactly how that sounds. He'd actually been gone closer to 20 months by then. But I count from the letter. The letter is when the silence got a signature. I'll explain that. I'll explain all of it. I've waited tables at the Bluebird Diner since I was 19. Darlene, who owns the place, 31 years behind that register, likes to say I came with the building. My mother waited tables there before me, right up until the cancer took her. And she left me exactly two things: a little white house with a bad roof at the end of Cutler Road, and a quilt she stitched by hand the winter she got sick. That's the whole inheritance. That, and knowing how to keep your hands steady when everything else is shaking. You learn that carrying coffee. He walked in on a Tuesday night, 2 Octobers before my daughter was born, in the worst storm we'd had in a decade. It was 9:40. We close at 10. The power had flickered twice. Route 9 was flooding at the low crossing, and the only customer left was a trucker named Earl, who was married to his hash browns. The door banged open and a man stood there dripping like he'd swum in, wearing a suit that had no business in our county. His phone was dead. The roads were closing behind him one by one. He ordered black coffee and apologized for existing, which I remember thinking was a strange combination. I kept the grill on and made him eggs he didn't order, because my mother raised me in a diner and you don't let a soaked man sit with just coffee. He stayed until closing, not talking at me, asking real questions, not polite ones. What the town was like in summer, why the hardware store had 2 names on the sign, whether the pie was actually made here. He listened to the answers like they were being entered into evidence. At the door, with the rain finally quitting, he said, "Most people would have waited out the storm somewhere. You make this town feel like something worth getting stuck in." Then, quieter, like he was surprised by it, "You make it feel warm." He came back the next morning, and the next. He said he was in town looking at land. His company was scouting sites for a distribution hub, and he'd wanted to walk the ground himself instead of trusting a report. He drove a rented Ford Escape with the barcode sticker still in the window, and dressed like a man trying to remember how normal clothes were. 2 weeks of pie and questions turned into a month. A month turned into a booth that everybody just started calling his. I found out who he was at the Walmart checkout, of all places. His face looking up at me from a business magazine by the gum rack, next to a number with a B in it. I stood there holding diaper cream for a customer's baby shower gift, and thought, that's the man who tips in exact change because he read somewhere that waitresses have to claim estimated tips. When I put the magazine on the counter in front of him the next day, he went very still. Then he said, "For 3 weeks I got to be a guy who likes your pie. Do you have any idea what that's worth?" I should have been angry. I wasn't. That was the first thing I ever forgave him for. It would not be the last. For 6 months we were just people. He fixed my porch step with a $9 board and did it wrong, and I taught him to do it right, and he was prouder of that step than of anything with his name on it in New York. He kept a toothbrush at my place. On cold nights we sat under my mother's quilt and he read 1-star reviews of 5-star resorts out loud until I couldn't breathe. Every Sunday he talked to his mother on the phone, and every Sunday it took him about an hour afterward to come back into his own face. "My mother handles problems," he told me once. Something about the way he said handles made me picture hands around a throat. I told myself it was a rich people word. Remember that. I'll need you to remember that. Then, in March, the storm that mattered hit, not weather. Headlines: a federal investigation into the company, his family's company, his dead father's company. Words like probe and irregularities on the front page, the stock down 31% in 9 days, 40,000 employees holding their breath. His father had been gone 2 years. His mother chaired the board, and the family jet touched down at our county airstrip, which was the first time this town fully believed he was who he was. He came to my kitchen the night before he left. He held my face in both hands, and I want you to know he was not a dramatic man. This was the most dramatic thing I ever saw him do. And he said, "Give me time. I'll come back when I can protect you." I believed him. Here's the part that took me 2 years to be able to say out loud, I was right to. The first 3 weeks, he called twice from a blocked number, both calls under a minute. Lawyers everywhere, he said. They'd taken his devices, his phone, his laptop, everything, standard procedure when the government is reading your company's mail. Don't believe what you read. I love you. Click. Week 5, I called his cell, and a recording told me the number was no longer in service. His email bounced. I wrote to the hotel where he used to stay before he stayed with me, and the envelope came back stamped in red. I told myself it was the investigation. Lawyers make people disappear on paper all the time. That's practically the job. Then on a Tuesday in April, I sat on my bathroom floor with a plastic stick and a 3-minute timer running on my phone, and 2 pink lines showed up before the timer did. I laughed. One short, stupid laugh, alone on cold tile. Then my hands started shaking and didn't stop for the rest of the day. I dropped 2 forks at work. Darlene asked if I was coming down with something. I said yes. Technically true. I decided decided I would tell him myself or no one at all, which meant I had to reach him. I called the company's main line and asked for his office. A young woman answered. Warm, quick, kind, Priya, his assistant. The first few times she was lovely. He's unavailable, but I'll pass along your message. I left my name, my number, the word urgent, which I hated using because every crazy person says urgent. I called 14 times over 9 weeks. I know it was 14 because I wrote everyone down in a spiral notebook from the dollar store. Date, time, who answered, what they said. I don't know why I did that. Waitress habit, maybe. You write the order down even when you're sure you'll remember it. Call 15, a different voice answered. Older, flat, a voice like a closed door. This office is asking you to stop calling. Do you understand? Like I was a bill collector. Like I was a problem being handled. I stood in the back hallway of the Bluebird with the phone pressed against my forehead and told myself the only thing that kept me upright. He doesn't know they're doing this. He can't know. By month 5, my apron didn't hide anything. And a pregnant waitress with no ring and no boyfriend anybody had ever met is arithmetic a small town does out loud. The church ladies at booth 6 got quiet whenever I brought their eggs and loud the second I walked away. The casseroles that show up when your mother dies, there's a version of this town that sends those. I stopped getting invited to the version that does. People asked who the father was. I said nothing. Not because I'm noble, because saying it out loud was a grenade with no pin. Try it yourself. The billionaire currently under federal investigation is the father of my baby. Say it in a diner in a town of 3,100 people with no proof but a toothbrush he left in your bathroom. I'd seen how that story goes for the waitress. The waitress does not win that story. So the town wrote its own version, where I'd invented a man. Easier math. My Uncle Ray, my mother's brother, the only family I had left, came to my kitchen in July and put his hands flat on the table hard enough to jump the salt shaker. Just say his name, honey, whoever he is. I'll drive to wherever he is myself. Just say it. I said nothing. He looked at me like I'd chosen a ghost over my own blood. Maybe I had. He didn't come back for a long time. At 8 months, I wrote the letter. 3 nights at the kitchen table, 6 drafts. What made the final version? The due date, the 20-week ultrasound photo, the good one, where you can see her hand. And the sentence I was most ashamed of and least sorry for. I still believe you. I mailed it certified on August 14th at 9:12 in the morning. It cost $8.35. Miss Ida, who has run that post office window for 30 years, taped the receipt twice and looked at the address. His family's estate, the only address of his I could find that was a house and not a lawyer, and had the grace to say nothing at all. 11 days later, the green return card showed up in my mailbox. Delivered. Signed for at the estate. A signature I couldn't read, initials like barbed wire. Proof it arrived. Proof someone, in that house, held my letter in their hands. I put the green card in the coffee tin on the top shelf, and I waited. September. I sat on the porch every single evening, watching the road go dark, one hand on my belly, doing math on every set of headlights. None of them slowed. The silence after that letter was different from the silence before it. Before, I could tell myself he didn't know. After, the silence had a signature on it. I stopped being able to eat in the mornings, and it had nothing to do with the pregnancy. Darlene moved me off the floor and onto the register without being asked, and nobody said why. And that small mercy nearly broke me worse than the whispering. My water broke at 2:20 in the morning on October 9th. Darlene drove me to County General doing 80 in a 45 in a Buick that hadn't seen 60 since the Clinton administration. In labor and delivery, I got Nurse Debbie Kowalski, 26 years on that floor, forearms like a stevedore. She took my hand and said, "Squeeze as hard as you want, sugar. I've had linebackers in this room. You'll rank." At 4:52 a.m., my daughter was born. 6 pounds, 11 ounces. A full head of dark hair and eyes that stayed gray. Not newborn gray that turns. His gray. The exact gray. Like weather trying to make up its mind. A woman came in with a clipboard for the birth certificate. Mother's name. Date. Then father's name. My pen hung over that line for a long time. Then I left it blank. Nurse Kowalski watched me do it and said nothing. And I have loved her ever since. The first year, I found out exactly how much a blank line costs. The washing machine died in December. A $200 repair I didn't have. So I washed onesies in the kitchen sink and dried them on a rack over the stove. The roof started leaking in February, right over the corner where the crib was. The only roofer in the county quoted me $4,200. I moved the crib, bought a $6 tarp, watched a YouTube video with 40,000 views, and got up there myself in 30-degree wind. I worked breakfast shifts with the playpen set up in Darlene's office, and Darlene pretended that was a normal thing a diner has, and everyone who loved me pretended along with her. Her first laugh was at a straw wrapper. A straw wrapper. I laughed so hard I cried, and then I was just crying because the person who should have been laughing next to me was a roomer. Her first steps happened at the diner on a Sunday afternoon, right between booth 4 and the pie case. 2 waitresses and a trucker applauded. I smiled until close. Then I went into the walk-in, where the compressor is loud enough to cover anything, and cried into a stack of clean aprons. Her first birthday was a yellow cake from a 112 box mix and 1 candle. 3 guests, Darlene, Miss Ida from the post office, and Uncle Ray, who showed up with a stuffed rabbit and no apology. We don't do apologies in my family. He held her the entire time and left before anyone could catch him feeling things. And every night, this is the part I'm least proud of, I rocked her under my dead mother's quilt and told her, "Your daddy's coming back. He just doesn't know the way yet." I hated myself a little every time I said it. I said it anyway. Month 13 is when the watchers started. A gray Camry parked by the Baptist church across from my place. 2 mornings running, engine idling. I told myself, bird watcher. In March, sure. A week later, Darlene cornered me by the coffee station. A man had sat at her counter, soft hands, city haircut, left a $40 tip on a $9 check, and asked questions. Does the girl with the baby drink? Does she have men over? flavor? Who's the father? Darlene told him the pie flavors and nothing else, then wrote his plate number on a guest check and gave it to me. Then my friend Renata, who works at the county clerk's office, called me at home. Somebody had requested a certified copy of my daughter's birth certificate, which is legal. Anybody can. That's exactly what made it worse. That afternoon, I dropped a full tray for the first time in 9 years of waiting tables. A coffee pot hitting tile sounds like a gunshot with syrup on it, so I did the only smart thing I did that whole year. I took $75 out of the tip jar, mostly in 1s and 5s, and I went to see Ruth Ann Pierce. Ruth Ann has practiced family law for 22 years out of an office above the H&R Block, smokes exactly half a cigarette at a time, and does not blink enough. She counted my ones, pushed a 10 back across the desk. For the parking meter, she said. There is no parking meter. And then she wrote 3 things on a legal pad, numbered in handwriting like a threat. 1. Nobody just takes a child. Unfit is a word rich people swing like a crowbar, but a court needs evidence, evaluations, a guardian ad litem, process. Process is slow and process is loud. Rich people hate loud. 2. Keep the green card in that spiral notebook somewhere fireproof. I bought a $12.99 fireproof pouch at the hardware store the same day and put it in the coffee tin. 3. And she leaned across the desk for this one. This is a one-party consent state. If anyone from that family so much as says good morning to you, your phone is recording in your pocket before they finish the word good. Practice it. I practiced it. Alone in my kitchen like an idiot, drawing my phone like a gunslinger. Swipe, tap, pocket. First try took 19 seconds. By the end of the week, I had it down to 6. Remember that too. Then came the Tuesday. 8:40 in the morning, the corner TV at the diner on mute, tuned to the business channel for the regulars. I was refilling Earl's coffee when his face came on the screen. 22 months older, grayer at the temples, reading something that wasn't his. The closed captions did the rest. Leadership announcement expected. And then engagement to be announced Friday. To an heiress with a name like a law firm, a family whose money was old enough to have opinions. I finished pouring Earl's coffee without spilling a drop. Steady hands, thanks Mom. Then I walked to the ladies' room, sat down on the floor of the handicap stall, the same floor as the 2 pink lines because life is not subtle, and set a timer for 3 minutes. That's what I gave myself. 3 minutes. Then I washed my face and worked a double. 2 days later, Thursday, my day off, I was at the kitchen sink washing baby clothes. The machine was dead again, a different part this time, when I heard gravel. My driveway is 200 yards long. That's a lot of warning, if your body knows how to use it. Mine did. I looked out the window and saw a black Mercedes coming up the drive so clean it looked wet, and the gray Camry had been gone from the church that morning, which suddenly felt worse than seeing it, and my hands were already moving. Swipe, tap, pocket, 6 seconds. Thank you, Ruth Ann. I dried my hands on my jeans, checked the monitor. My daughter was down for her morning nap, and walked out onto my porch to stand on my own ground. A driver opened the rear door. She stepped out into my yard the way you'd step onto ice you didn't trust. Cream suit, curls, hair that didn't move in the wind because the wind hadn't been introduced. She picked her way around the mud like it was beneath negotiation, stopped at the bottom of my steps, and looked up. At the tarp on my roof, at the porch, at me. So this is where he hid, she said. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't have to. He has her jaw. Isn't that awful? My daughter has a piece of that jaw too, and I love it anyway, because that's what love does. It launders things. I came to end this quietly, she said. Then she opened her handbag, took out a checkbook, tore off a check that was already signed, and tossed it at my feet, which brings us back to where I started. The check on the boards, the dare on the amount line. Write any number you want, then take that baby and disappear. Pick it up, she said. I didn't touch it. No, she smiled. I've served a lot of smiles in my life. I can read them the way Earl reads a menu. This one had zero warmth in it. It wasn't even for me. It was for the version of this story she'd already written on the drive over. Think carefully, sweetheart. She came up one step. Gerald Voss has been this family's attorney for 20 years. Senior partner. He has drafted motions you can't pronounce. I can afford lawyers who will paint you as unstable, unfit. You serve pancakes. Your roof leaks. I've seen the photographs. You have no husband, no savings, no protection. There will be evaluations, depositions, a guardian ad litem billing $400 an hour. Tell me, how many breakfast shifts is that? She let the question sit. I will take that child if you make me. My hands were shaking. My voice wasn't. My daughter is not for sale. She came up another step, and her voice dropped, and quiet turned out to be so much worse than loud. You think this is cruelty, she said. It's housekeeping. My son is in New York right now preparing to announce his engagement to a woman who actually belongs in our world. The party is planned. The families have agreed. You were a distraction. That baby is an inconvenience. Engagement. I'd read the word Tuesday on a closed caption, and it had stayed a word. Out of her mouth, it hit like a slap, like it finally had a hand behind it. The offer expires when I get back in that car, she said. Write a number. Any number. Hand me the check, and my driver will have a very pleasant morning. Or don't, and you can meet Gerald. And here is what was happening inside me in the space of about 4 seconds. $1,114. Ruth Ann's legal pad. A guardian ad litem driving up from the city. A judge who golfs at places I've never seen. My daughter's gray eyes. If I take the check, she grows up, and someday I have to tell her the price. If I don't, she might grow up somewhere I can't reach. My knees wanted the floor. I gave them the porch railing instead. That's when I noticed the second vehicle, a dark SUV parked out at the tree line where my property meets the Hendersons' cut field. It had been there a few minutes. More of hers, I figured. A witness or a man with a camera. I was wrong, but I'll get there. You people signed for my letter, I said. My voice stayed level, and I have no idea how. 15 months ago, somebody in your house signed for it. I have the receipt. Something moved behind her eyes. Fast, like a fish under ice. Then it was gone. Letters get lost, she said. Girls get confused. Judges understand both. And that's when I heard it. A low thumping in my sternum before it was in my ears. The windows started rattling in their frames. The trees along the drive bent sideways all at once like they'd been told to. Dust ripped across the yard. My daughter's onesies snapped on the drying rack through the open window, and the blank check lifted off my porch boards, floated for one ridiculous second, and landed in the mud at the bottom of the steps. A black helicopter dropped out of the sky into the field beside my house like it had been thrown there. His mother turned around and went white. Not pale, white. That's not possible, she said. The door opened before the blades even stopped. He jumped out, wrinkled suit, tie loose, then gone, yanked off, and left in the grass. 22 months older, and a face I had never seen on him in all our time. Furious and broken at once, both at full volume and locked on me like the field, the house, the Mercedes, and his own mother were set dressing. He crossed that field like she was invisible. She grabbed at his arm as he passed. "What are you doing here? How did you even—" He didn't glance at her. He stopped at the bottom of my steps, mud on shoes that cost more than my roof repair, chest heaving, and he said my name, just my name, like a prayer he'd been repeating for 400 miles. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a plastic document sleeve. Inside was a faded envelope, my handwriting on the front, a certified sticker gone dull with time, my letter. My knees nearly buckled. The railing took my weight for the second time in 5 minutes. "Priya found this last night," he said to me, gently. Then he turned to his mother, and his voice went somewhere slow and deadly. "In your private safe." Her face drained. "The lawyers sent her for the Delaware files, the ones under subpoena, the ones you swore under oath didn't exist. You gave her the code yourself. You were in Aspen." He held the sleeve up between two fingers like evidence, because that's exactly what it was. "You had it. 15 months. You knew I had a child, and you locked the proof in a safe. I protected this family. You protected a stock price," he said. "You stole my daughter's first steps, her first laugh, her first birthday. You let the mother of my child wash baby clothes in a sink while you shopped for my fiancé." Then he looked back at me, and this next part he could barely get out. "They showed me a settlement, a release with your signature on it. No contact by request. $250,000. I saw your name on the page, and it fooled me for over a year. I never signed—" "I know," he said. "Now." And then, behind me, through the screen door, my daughter woke up from her nap with a sleepy little sound, half question, half song. He froze. All that fury drained out of his face in about 1 second, and what was underneath it was worse. Oh, the kind that's already grieving. Maybe I wanted him to see exactly what he'd missed. I'm not proud of every reason I had that morning. I went inside and lifted her out of the crib, warm and heavy, crib lines printed on her cheek, and I carried her out onto the porch into the light. She blinked at the loud new world. Then she found the man standing at the bottom of the steps, and she looked at him with his own gray eyes. Then she reached out one tiny hand, opening and closing it. "Da," one word, from a baby who had never once seen his face. He didn't move for a second. And then this billionaire, this man with a helicopter cooling in my hayfield and his name on buildings, dropped to his knees on my rotting porch boards and sobbed into his hand. Not movie crying, the kind with no dignity in it, the kind a body only does when something 15 months dead comes back to life. His mother's voice sliced through it like she was sending back a salad. "Touching, but if you stay here, the board removes you by morning. Emergency session. I'll call it myself from the car. You will lose everything. The chairmanship, voting control, your father's company, all of it." He kissed my daughter's tiny fingers. She grabbed his thumb and tried to eat it, because she's a baby, and to her this was just a Tuesday. Then he stood up and looked at his mother the way you look at something you're about to demolish. "Then call them," he said, "because that SUV at the tree line is Thomas Reyes, my head of security, 12 years, Secret Service before that, and he has been recording every threat you made on this porch." She turned toward the tree line. Out by the fence, a big man in a gray jacket held up a phone, unhurried, like a man checking the weather. I took my own phone out of my back pocket and turned the screen toward her. Voice memo, red dot, 41 minutes and counting. "So did I said. "One-party consent state. My lawyer's very thorough." She looked at my $80 phone like it was a snake. He wasn't finished. "And tonight, the board isn't just going to hear these recordings," he said. "They're going to hear what else you've been hiding in that safe. Here is what was in that safe." It took his lawyers and Priya's sworn affidavit about 72 hours to lay it all out, and I want you to have the full inventory, because I earned it and so did you. 1. My letter. Opened. She had read it. The ultrasound photo was still inside, with a paperclip mark pressed into the corner. She had looked at her granddaughter's hand, the good picture, the one where you can see her hand, and then she had put her in the dark and turned a dial. Of everything that came after, the courtrooms and the headlines, that paperclip mark is the detail that still gets me up at 2 a.m. 2. The release, 11 pages, my signature on page 11, waiving all claims, requesting no contact, acknowledging receipt of a $250,000 settlement. Ruth Ann brought in a forensic document examiner she knew from her Atlanta days, Dr. Marion Oakes, 60-plus federal cases, who determined within a week that my signature had been traced. The source? A Bluebird Diner credit card slip. 2340, some stranger's lunch, my name signed on the tip line the way I've signed it 10,000 times. The man with the soft hands and the $40 tip hadn't just been asking questions. He'd been shopping for my handwriting. 3. A wire memo for that same $250,000 marked as settling the matter, sent to something called Harbor Point Consulting LLC. I never saw a cent, obviously, but Harbor Point turned out to be the load-bearing wall of this whole story, because it belonged to the same nest of shell companies the Justice Department had spent 2 years chasing through the company's books. Consulting fees paid to companies that consulted on nothing. Years of it. Her signature, her authorizations, her wall, the investigation that took him away from me. She built the thing it was investigating. And when it started to crack, she pulled her son home to stand in front of it and went shopping for a rescue dressed as a romance. Because the fiancé's family wasn't a love story, it was the White Knight investor, and that engagement was a term sheet with a ring on it. 4. 2 bankers' boxes of documents responsive to a federal subpoena, 14 months overdue. The ones she had sworn, under oath, did not exist. There's a word for that one. It stopped being an abstract word very quickly. The emergency board session happened that same night, 7:30 p.m., by video from his lawyer's office in the city. His call, not hers. Turns out you shouldn't announce your plays on a porch with 2 phones running. I sat in the hallway eating vending machine crackers with Thomas, who does not talk, and Priya, who talks enough for both of them and apologized to me 11 times for 14 phone messages she was never allowed to deliver. The board heard 9 minutes of porch audio, then Priya's affidavit, then Dr. Oakes's preliminary findings. The vote to remove her as chair was 8-1. The one was her college roommate, and honestly, respect. There was an announcement in New York that Friday after all, just not the one with the ring. A company statement instead, the chairwoman stepping away. Full cooperation with the Department of Justice. The heiress released 3 gracious sentences and, I'm told, sent him a very good bottle of scotch with a card that said, "Lucky escape, both of us." In February came the indictment. 3 counts of obstruction of justice, 4 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count, my favorite, and I'm allowed a favorite, of theft of mail. 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 1708. A federal crime with a return receipt. Miss Ida heard that on the news and said the coldest sentence I have ever heard from a woman in a cardigan. I tape my receipts twice for a reason. The arraignment photo ran everywhere. They don't let you keep the pearls. As for us, he didn't move me into a penthouse. He asked me what I needed and I said a roof, and I meant the literal one. He showed up Saturday with Thomas, a truck bed full of lumber, and a $60 nail gun he was visibly afraid of. A man who runs a $40 billion company hit his own thumb 4 times in one afternoon, and my daughter clapped every single time. It took 2 weekends. It is not a perfect route. I would not trade it for the check. We signed an acknowledgement of paternity at the county building on a Wednesday. It took 11 minutes. The father's name line on her birth certificate isn't blank anymore. Some nights I take the copy out of the coffee tin and just look at it. One evening on the porch, he read my letter back to me out loud. He made it as far as "I still believe you," and couldn't finish. Good, I told him. You weren't supposed to be able to. Uncle Ray showed up the week the news broke and stood in my yard turning his hat in his hands like it owed him money. "I should have believed you with no name at all," he said. I told him to get inside and meet his great niece. He cried in his truck afterward where he thought I couldn't see. We still don't do apologies in my family. We do casseroles. His were terrible. He brought them anyway. The church ladies wave now. Darlene taped the newspaper front page to the pie case and tells every stranger that booth 9 is where he used to sit. It was booth 4. I let her have it. There was a preacher on my porch this past June. 11 guests. A baby in a yellow dress who yelled, "Da!" right in the middle of the vows. And nobody corrected her, because that was the whole point of the gathering. He says this town feels warm. I tell him that's the new insulation. He knows what I mean. I know what he means. And her? Her lawyers still send letters, motions, appeals. Once, I'm told a crisis firm drafted it. Something shaped like an apology. Thick envelopes, certified mail, signature required. I sign for every single one. I want the record to show they arrived. Then I put them in the coffee tin on the top shelf, right next to a small green card from a post office window, and I never open them. Not one. Because I learned something about silence from that woman. The cruelest answer in the world is letting someone know their words reached you and giving them nothing back. She taught me that.